Okay, hi everyone. My name is Adriana Fazio. Welcome to a weekly Dharma gathering, October 16th. Tonight we have the pleasure of being led by Dr. Karen G. Williams. Karen will be leading a talk called Setting Things in Motion, Cultivating Kind Intentions. This talk will explore the impact of our motivations and how to practice with intentions. We will dive into what it is to bring kind intentions to our practice and therefore our lives. A little bit about Dr. Williams. Dr. Karen G. Williams is on the New York Insight Teachers Council and a graduate of the Spirit Rock Community Dharma Leader Training Program. She's practiced Vipassana meditation since 2008 under the mentorship of Doral Williams. Karen is assistant professor of anthropology at Gutman Community College. Her research examines strategies implemented inside correctional facilities to help incarcerated people return home to their communities. When Karen is not writing or teaching, she inhabits her alter ego, Back Alley Dread, who plays roller derby. Karen's practice is rooted in cultivating a spirit of wholeheartedness on and off the track. A little bit about tonight's evening. We'll be first led by a guided meditation, a Dharma talk, and then we'll close with a Q&A. In terms of with this online format, if you prefer not to be recorded in any capacity, please make sure to turn off your camera. The Q&A section will be recorded. And then as well, if you'd like, and instead you can input questions that you may have throughout the session tonight in the chat box, whenever you'd like. I think that's all in terms of introductory announcements. So I think I'll hand over the rest of the evening to Dr. Williams. Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. It's so funny to be called doctor in this space. Thank you so much. Really excited and very nervous to be here with everyone tonight. So before we begin, I'd like us to practice a little gratitude. I think that there's a lot of things that were set in motion to allow us to be here this evening or whenever you're listening to the talk, to take some time out, things that the conditions were set for us. So this is a little gratitude practice. I've modified it. It's often practiced with Thich Nhat Hanh, and it's an excerpt of touching the earth. In gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my blood family. In gratitude, I bow to all generations of ancestors in my spiritual family. In gratitude, I bow to this land and all the ancestors who made it available. In gratitude and compassion, I bow down and transmit my energy to those I love. In understanding and compassion, I bow down to reconcile myself with all those who have made me suffer. Thank you. And so we'll begin the meditation. And so just finding ourselves in a comfortable seated position, whatever that is for us this evening. Taking our seats in a relaxed, easeful, and balanced way. And bringing awareness to the body sitting. Noticing any sensations arising, any thoughts, any feelings. Know that anything that is arising, thoughts, feelings, sensations, it's okay. You're perfect just as you are. And so we can relax into our seat, allowing the stories, the judgments, allowing them to drift away. And so we bring our awareness to our breath, connecting with the rhythm of the breath, feeling the sensation of the in breath and the out breath. And so for this meditation, we'll use the breath as the anchor. And so when the mind wanders, thoughts, sensations, stories arise, it's okay. We can bring our awareness back to the breath. If sleepiness arises, that's okay too. We can take notice of the sleepiness and then come back to the breath. And so this practice is not about pushing away what's arising. So whatever arises, again, thoughts, sensations, feelings, we can make them part of the practice, making note of them, and then with kindness and gentleness, coming back to the breath. Where's your mind now? Are you lost in thought, taking a list, retelling a story? And with gentleness, we can return to the breath. Each moment that we return is a moment of mindfulness. I invite you to take a moment to check in with your posture, checking to see if you're in a posture that best supports your practice. Again, one that's relaxed, balanced, and at ease. Is there a leaning in, trying to create something? Or is there a leaning back, a coasting? And so we try to find the middle ground. If we get lost 100 times and have to return to the breath 100 times, it's perfectly okay. You just keep coming back to the breath in this moment, in this moment, in this moment. And so for the last few minutes of the sit, I invite you to find a little bit more ease, a little bit more ease in the body, in your practice. There's nothing to do. There's nowhere to go. Perhaps noticing if there is a shift in your attitude or a release of tension just by knowing that the sit is ending soon. So thank you for your practice. Hmm. So today I'm going to talk to you about intentions or cultivating kind intentions. And so it's great for us to start off by understanding that intentions are very different from goals. And so goals, when we think of goals, so we think of we're achieving something. So a goal might be to get 100% on an exam or lose 10 pounds by a certain day or drink 8 glasses of water a day or whatever it is. There might be goals at work. There might be goals at home. There might be goals in our personal life. And it's okay to have goals. But what what I would like to talk about today is intentions, these kind intentions. And intentions point to something that's much deeper. So when we think about cultivating intentions, we want to ask, what motivates us? What is the fuel behind our actions? And our intentions, they really come from a deep embodied sense. And so an intention might be to be kinder, to be more generous, to be more open and compassionate. And so the intentions that we set guide us through all of our through all situations, through all of our practices. And to cultivate these intentions, we have to slow things down. And we also have to get curious about ourselves, because these intentions really point to how we want to show up in the world, right? How do we show up to the small things, to the big things, to when life is challenging, to when life is joyful and exciting, right? And so these intentions is like, how do we want to be when we're in relationship with other people, we're in relationship with ourselves, and how we go through our daily routines. The question is like, well, then how do we do this? Like, how do we set these kind intentions, or these intentions to be more open and to be more compassionate? And so we do it in a way in which, again, that we're not striving to be somebody, to be something, right? But like all practices, the cultivating kind intentions, we actually have to set the groundwork. We have to set the container, the conditions for kindness to arise, for kindness to emerge, for compassion to emerge, for compassion to arise. And so one of the ways that we do that is through our sitting practice. Our sitting meditation practice can be supportive. And so the meditation practice helps us to slow things down, right? We can begin to see things as they appear moment to moment. And by attuning to the breath in our meditation practice, we're able to see the static ways that we might actually relate to the breath, or to the body, and to other phenomena. And when we see this moment to moment arising, we can really begin to see how all phenomena, there's three characteristics about them. They're impermanent, there's the nature of selflessness, and they're also unsatisfactory. So I actually like the way that Ruth King talks about these three characteristics of phenomena in mindfulness of race. And she calls them the three Ps. She says, not permanent, not personal, and not perfect. And so when we see that phenomena is not perfect, it's not personal, and it's not permanent, and we see how things are as they are, right, in that moment to moment arising, it allows us to have more space to bring a different type of response to situations. And so it allows us to get out of our habitual ways of relating to things. And so Pema Chodron, she says, meditation teaches us how to open and relax with whatever arises without picking and choosing. It teaches us to experience the uneasiness and the urge fully. and to interpret it and to interrupt, to interrupt the momentum that usually follows. We do this by not following the afterthoughts and leaning to return again and again to the present moment. And so when we slow things down and we return to the present moment, we begin to see that we have this choice point. We have a choice to respond in a way that's more compassionate, that's more open, that's more kind, as opposed to, again, going back to that habitual pattern that we might have of responding or reacting to things. And so that's how our sitting practice, when we're able to see the moment to moment arising on the cushion, we take that off of the cushion and we bring that same sense of awareness to all things, to all of our relationships. Because in those moments when we slow things down and we choose a different way, we're cultivating more skillful patterns. We're changing the flow of our relationship with people. But at the same time, we also have to remember what Ruth King says. She says, we are all perfect in our imperfection, which is always changing. Like coming back to that impermanence. And so perhaps we didn't get it right that time, but like all practices of cultivating kinder intentions, we know that we can return. We can use the practice as a way of grounding ourselves in that moment. So like in my introduction, she said that I do a lot of work with incarcerated people, and particularly around prisoner reentry. And so I'm an anthropologist by trade, and part of being an anthropologist is that, we go out and we talk to people and we listen to their stories. And so when I was doing field research several years ago, I was in the middle of an interview, and I'll call her name Aditha. I named her Aditha. And so I had went in and I had set up my recorder and I had the consent form and I was ready to begin, the interview with Aditha. And at this time, I had been practicing, and one of my intentions was really to be kind and really to be open. And it was a way, like, I wanted to meet the people that I was talking with in a really open way, and listen to their stories and listen to their hearts. And so I sat down, and then so I had everything out there, and I had went through the whole spiel about this is this research project, and I'm looking at prisoner reentry and yada yada yada, and I was all ready to go. And Aditha looked at me, and she was like, "Why are you doing this work?" And at that moment, I was like, "Whoa, wait a minute! I just explained everything." And I was thinking, well, wait, what do you mean? And at that moment, I realized that fear had arisen. I was scared that I wasn't going to get the interview. I was scared that I did all of this work, and not that she wasn't the only person that I was interviewing, um, but it was just like I could really see the kind of the the drive to get the information. And so I had to come back to my intentions about being open and being kind and really listen to what Aditha was asking me. Aditha wasn't asking me about the project, but she was asking me about what was that internal thing that drove me to do that work. And so I sat back and I softened, I took a couple breaths, and I answered her question, right? I shared with her the personal reasons why I was engaged in this work, right? Sharing her with that my family mirrors many other families that are poor, that are of color, and that have come in contact with the law, and that people cycle in and out of prisons. And after sharing that with Aditha, she's like, oh, you get it. And she signed a consent form, and we had our interview. And so I think like part of this practice of cultivating kind attentions, it's really about how we can stay in tune to this internal, and how when the external might be challenging, might not be what we want it to be, but we can stay connected to our intentions and really respond and show up in a way that's kinder, that's more compassionate for ourselves and for the people that we're in relationship with. And so for me, this practice, both on and off the cushion, has really been about how do I make these, how do I make my life seamless? How do how does the practice not get regulated to the cushion? But the meditation practice on the cushion supports the way that I practice in the world. And so we do this over and over again through the joys, through the pain. And so in each time that we come to that choice point, we're able to stretch and continually to build our capacity to be kinder, to meet the challenges. And so this practice is about setting the groundwork, about setting the conditions to how we want to show up. Hmm. So let's just take a moment and let that settle in. And just taking a couple of deep breaths. And so as we move through the world, we can remember that nothing's personal, it's not perfect, and it's not permanent. So I think that ready for Q&A. Let's see, something in the chat. Hey, Karen. Okay, so says hi. Okay, do you have a daily intention practice as part of your meditation practice? I have some questions. Do I find that intentions for kindness, compassion, openness are synonymous? Do you find that intentions for compassion? Do you find, I got you, I see. Oh, yes, do you find that intentions? Okay. Yeah, so in terms of a daily practice of it, I do remind myself daily when I come into um, situations um, that might be challenging. And I often find that I have to remind myself of my intentions um, when things are challenging. But for me, the intention, I usually try to set the intentions around my birthday because that's kind of like my new year, like whatever, where I do my New Year's resolutions, everybody. But it's like, well, what is it this year that um, I want to work on? And this year was actually thriving. Um, and the kind intentions, kindness and openness. It's a couple of years back, but now I'm really working on, bringing this intention of like thriving and what does it mean to thrive, right? So what do I have to set in motion for myself to thrive? Whether it's when I'm teaching or when I'm in relationship with people, or just in my kind of daily life, what are the conditions that I have to set up to actually bring that sense of liveliness, of thriving? Um, and I think that the condition, compassion and kindness and openness, I mean, we can see them, they're in the same family, but also like compassion. Um, so not to go into the four Brahma Viharas, um, but in that practice, like loving kindness and compassion are actually two different practices. And so we can think of, if we take it from the Brahma Vihara, it's like we can think about like kindness and loving kindness as being uh, having a friendliness to all beings and being kind in that way. And compassion is really about tapping into someone's suffering and feeling and having compassion for your suffering and for the suffering of other people. And so I think that um, in a if you're beginning to practice with setting intentions, you can see them as working together, but you can also do some inquiry for yourself to think about like what are those subtle differences between kindness and what are some of the subtle differences between compassion and being open, right? So a sense of openness can mean you you can feel it energetically, but also bodily. Like if I'm being open to what's happening around without being consumed for it. So I would play around with some of the kind of subtleties of that. Does that answer your question? It's a great question. Great. So how do you approach the practice of kindness with difficult people in your life? That's another great question. So I think one of the things with difficult people, what I've been taught and my mentors often teaches, if you can, actually, you know what, I'll take this. So I teach, I'm going to use a person. So I teach, and often I find I have students that have different political persuasions as me. And you might see them as like difficult or different, right? Because you might have some combativeness. And so I think that what I try to do is find common points. So one is find like, so what do we have in common? Like we all have or have had families, and we all want to be loved. But we can also see that when we're dealing with difficult people or difficult situations, that the conditions have been set such that this person is showing up in the best way that they actually know how. And I'm showing up in the best way that I know how. And if we can see that, again, that it's not perfect, then maybe we can kind of step back a little bit and then re-engage, right? So we can kind of like begin to see these commonalities, see the impermanence, see the imperfection, and have a little breathing space, and then come back and engage. Um, but there's also very traditional practices that can be done with like loving kindness, with working through to the difficult person. And the difficult person is always towards the end because it's also much more challenging. I don't know if that's helpful. If you can type in a little bit more, if you need more. Okay, great. Okay. Yeah. Can you share a little bit about how you came to this topic? Okay. Yeah. So I initially um, came to this topic. Um, I've been teaching with a dear friend of mine, Ray Hausman, and we did a day long on kind intentions. But I also find that, like outside of like how we came to that, I find intentions are really helpful for me, just in my in my daily practice, and also just showing up and being an educator, because oftentimes, I can uh, have these goals in mind, but then I also, when I'm only goal oriented, I get exhausted. But I'm always like, but I'm probably almost always exhausted anyway. But um, but I think, but for me, um, having having intentions um, just allows for me to just have like a touch point sometimes, like when things are difficult, and and that I feel like everything is like going like amok. I'm just like, wait, okay, what's my intention? And I think it's like a really deep practice, because when we bring more intentions to our lives and we live out of our intentions, we have less regret. We have less shame when we're in relationship with people. We can, because we know that we're showing up um, in a very authentic and deep way, right? And so we can live fully, we can live our relationships in their fullness, right? When we are in touch with what motivates us, right? Are we being motivated by greed? Are we being motivated by hatred? Are we being motivated by delusion? Like when these things, these unskillful, um, these these unskillful states are motivating our actions, right? There's a lot of there's a lot of suffering that's created around that. And so bringing kind intentions and cultivating kind intentions allows us to show up in a more fuller way. Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, okay. So no problem. So the gratitude practice that I shared with you, and I definitely encourage people to take a look at this, is from the Plum Village, and it's called the Five Earth Touchings. And so it's just a gratitude practice of really bringing in our ancestors, both our physical ancestors and our spiritual ancestors, and the land into the room. Because I think that, so we do this practice. Um, I don't like to just say that what I can't think about on the backs of others, but like people have set it up such that we are here today. And I think it's important for us to bring a sense of gratitude, and also bringing the sense of gratitude um, is actually really supportive in cultivating kind intentions or kindness and compassion. Right? So when we can be grateful for whatever we have, in whatever capacity, and grateful for whomever or whatever has made it possible for us to be here. I think it's really important. But they have a lot of um, great um, uh, teachings around this. So if you look up Plum Village, Thich Nhat Hanh, you'll find it. A lot of great stuff there. Thank you. Thank you for coming. And yes, The Three Ps by Ruth King. Please look that up. Mindful of Race is a beautiful book, and she talks about the three Ps. Yeah, it's not perfect, personal, or permanent.
Hmm. So
Okay.
I think we can close. Dr. Williams, I wanted to see if you had any last things you'd like to share with everyone.
Um,
Any last thoughts or contemplations?
no, I think I covered everything. I was just looking through my notes, and yeah, I think it's just a practice, like, of really thinking about how we can bring it in, and whenever we can, right? Just a tap in as a gentle reminder, right? This is not something that we're like, again, it's not a striving, like, oh, I'm going to set my intentions, I'm going to be like, right? And it becomes like this goal, right? And so part of it is like we allow the wisdom to arise, right? So we set the conditions by practicing our formal meditation, by dropping in and remembering the three characteristics of all phenomena, right? That we remember that it's impermanent, that we remember these things. And so then we can begin to have, we can respond to things differently, and we can break those habitual patterns. And it doesn't happen overnight, right? And it's fine. Like sometimes, like you want to be open and kind, and you do something and it wasn't kind, right? But you can then reflect on that, right? And that's part of, like, we can think about it before it happens, while it happens, or after it happens, right? And so any of those moments of reflection is good, it's skillful, right? And so then we can be like, oh, okay, let me come back to that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciated that when you were responding to my question about like whether kindness and compassion is synonymous, it's how you brought up the Brahma Viharas. It's like almost just like just like a daily practice is like an intention of like embodying for myself at least like all of that, right? It's like okay, that's some pieces of all of this in some in
Yeah.
some in some way.
Yeah.
Right. And then it like speaks to you it different like spontaneously throughout the day
Hmm.
based on
Yeah.
solution uh
Yeah.
arises.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. When I'm like, even today as I was teaching, and I had, I'm all about, you missed the quiz, you came in late, you came in late, so I could be like, nah, you can't, they're like, I make it up, nah, you can't make it up. But today, like, I felt it, like, you know, um, young fella came in and he came in late, he missed the quiz. He didn't ask, but when we had discussion, I could see he had studied for it. He had his notes, he was answering questions, right? And so after they ended, I said, what happened? What happened today? Like, I noticed that you had your notes, you had your stuff ready. And he's like, the train was slow, the D, and then I had to get on the B, and then that was running local, and then he just missed it. And so in that moment, I could have been like, oh well, you know the policy, and he didn't ask, and so I was just like, oh, okay. I said, well, send me a summary of the readings. I can't give you full credit, but I can give you something, because I saw, right? I saw that you were prepared. And so in that moment, I could have fallen into my habitual of like, nah, nah, because that's what they used to. And so I softened. I was like, oh, wait, like you can soften here. It's okay. It's okay, right? And remembering that in those moments, I could hear that, right? And I could meet him, right? And those are small moments, and you think like maybe they don't matter, but they do. Like the small kind of this, it's the small ones that really set the groundwork, that set the base for when the big thing happens, that you're able to then respond, right? It's just a little small ones. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, it makes me think of um while Murad did a weekly Dharma gathering with us a few months back, and it was titled The Dharma of Resiliency.
Hmm.
um yeah, it just reminds me of like the resiliency that our practice gives us in some way.
Yeah. 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 Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, dear.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Um, yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight and leading the Dharma gathering and offering your
Yeah.
teaching.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank
Um,
you.
some closing announcements.
Okay.
So this talk will be available unlimited 48 hours post this live session. If you are a subscriber, a monthly subscriber, if you've just purchased this one Dharma gathering, you have unlimited access once it's posted on our platform. So don't worry about it disappearing in any way. Please join us next week and the following weeks. We have a really awesome lineup going through October into November. So next week is actually, we have a surprise guest teacher that is going to be announced at the end of the week. Dr. Shante Paradigm Smalls, our curator and one of the founders of Weekly Dharma Gathering, just returned back from the gathering at Spirit Rock. Karen, were you at it? No, right?
No, I didn't. I didn't get a chance to go.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, yes. I was at an equally beautiful retreat that weekend, but not that one. Yes.
Awesome. Well, for those of you who don't know, the gathering was a retreat at Spirit Rock for Black Buddhist teachers and practitioners. So that our guest teacher for next week will be someone who attended the gathering.
Ooh, that's exciting. I know, right?
Sneak peek. And then following next week, on the 30th, we have Shantae themselves leading a Dharma gathering, grounding in the body. The week afterwards, we have Caverly Morgan joining us from Portland, Oregon. The Absolute is Relative, touching race and justice and love. And then the week following, we have on the 13th, we have Karen. Let me know if I don't know if I'm pronouncing her name right, but I think it's Kira Duolingo, or is it Kiara?
Kiara. I think it's Kara. I think it's Kara. Yeah.
Kira. Okay.
Yeah.
Kira Duolingo will be leading a Dharma gathering titled "Grow the Good: Applying Wise Diligence to Incline Our Minds Towards Well-Being and Resilience." Beautiful. I think that's enough closing out since for me, Karen. Thank you so much again. We hope to have you on this platform again. Yeah.
Great. Thank you so much. See ya. Okay. Okay. Bye-bye.